We have learned from the rotational kinematics video what rotational acceleration is. So we now go to the force that causes the rotational motion. So it's the centripetal force. So the object will move in a circular motion, rotational motion, only if some external force acts on it. And specifically, it's called centripetal force. So here are some examples. So for a ball whirling in a circle at the end of a string, so the tension applied on the string keeps the ball moving in a circular motion. So if we are going to remove the string or if tension is not present, then tendency is the ball will go in a linear path. So another is the frictional force between the car and the track or the road. So what keeps the car move in circular motion or on a flat circular track, moving on a flat circular track is that friction between the car and the track. And for satellites orbiting around the Earth, so it's the gravitational force that keeps the satellite moving in a circular motion. So without gravity, the tendency is it will move in a linear direction. Okay. So for an object that is moving in circular motion, uniform circular motion, both its acceleration and then the force on it are directed toward the center of the circle. So if the object is positioned here, then the direction of the net force is here. Also for its acceleration, it's directed towards the center of the circle. So if the object is already here, then these are the arrows for the net force, and all of them are directed towards the center of the circle. While the green arrows are the tangential velocities. So from the second law of motion, so the net force, meaning the centripetal force specifically, is equal to mass times the centripetal acceleration. So it's either that formula or in terms of the tangential velocity. So we have mv squared over r, okay, where the acceleration, centripetal acceleration, is the ratio of the square of the tangential velocity to the radius of the circle. So take note that tangential velocity, okay, is also termed linear velocity or linear speed. We don't include the direction. So if the string will break, then there is no net force acting on the ball, so it obeys the first law of motion, so it will move in the direction of the linear or tangential velocity. Okay, so here. So for other applications, so for highway curves, so it must be designed well, okay, so that the frictional force would really do its part in ensuring the safety of the passengers. Okay, so especially if the road is slippery, so friction is reduced, so everybody must be cautious, okay, in riding, okay, in driving. So if the centripetal force is reduced, then tendency is it would go towards this direction, okay, in a straight line. So for this example on frictional force for the centripetal force, you may refer to the previous video. So as you can see here, there are skid marks that are actually straight lines. So this shows what will happen, okay, if lesser amount of force will keep the object moving in rotational motion. So it's important for roads to be what we call banked, KBANKED, okay, or the angle is not 0 degrees. Okay, so it shouldn't be a flat surface to ensure safety, okay, on our roads. So the angle of safety would depend, of course, on many factors. Okay, one is the type of material used on the roads and the the automobiles that are passing on those roads. So there is this component that is directed towards the center of the circle, okay, which is only a part of the normal force, as you can see here. So if this is the surface, then the weight of the object is always directed downward, and then perpendicular to the surface is the normal force. Okay, so the normal force has this component which is directed towards the center of the circle, and this component that is parallel to the weight of the object. And then this arrow here represents the centripetal acceleration, or also called radial acceleration. That's why it's letter R, a radial or centripetal acceleration. So here's an example of banking of roads. So if the previous example is going to be revised, and there's already a banking, okay, so we need to solve for this angle here. So for the car traveling at a certain speed, so the previous problem, okay, given speed is 30, okay, miles per hour, and the radius is 50, okay, meters. So we can bank the curve at just the right angle so that no friction at all is needed to maintain the car's turning radius. So it can safely round the curve even on wet ice. So we are going to use these values here to solve for the angle of banking. So, as shown earlier, we have these components of the normal force. Okay, so the component which is directed towards the center of the circle. So this would be our centripetal force. So it's the normal force times sine of the banking angle. And the other component is this one that is opposite the weight of the object. So it's normal force times cosine of angle theta. So again, our centripetal force is equal to, okay, this n times sine of theta. Okay, so that component of the normal force. And then we know from the centripetal force formula with speed and radius, okay, that it is mass times v squared over r. So equating it to n sine theta. But n is not given, so we'll use another equation, okay, and then we're going to plug it into this equation. So let's label this first as equation 1, and we'll get back to it later. So there's another axis that we can use. Okay, so for this axis, okay, the y-axis, So the car is not moving, obviously, along this axis. So this force is equal to this force. So we can say that n times cosine of theta is equal to mass times acceleration, okay, due to gravity. So we can replace the n in equation 1 with the n from this equation. So solving for n, we have the weight of the car over cosine of the banking angle. So let this be equation number 2. So if we're going to substitute equation 2 to equation 1, so we have mv squared over r equals n, which is mg over cosine theta, a times sine of theta. So we can cancel out the m's here, and then we are going to solve for angle theta that is required in the problem. So we have two trigonometric functions, sine and cosine. So the ratio is equal to tangent. Okay, so it's g tangent theta, and then it's b squared over r. So to solve for angle theta, so we need to get the arctangent of b squared over r times g. Okay, so multiplying the whole equation by g. So g is transferred here, multiplied to r, and then get the arctangent of b squared over rg. So plugging in the values, okay, velocity or speed in miles per hour. So our radius is in meters. So let's convert that 30 miles per hour into meters, okay, or kilometers. And then since acceleration due to gravity is meters per second squared, so let's also convert the hours to seconds. So space here for the second conversion factor. So 1 mile is 1609.34 meters, and 1 hour is 60 minutes times 60 seconds, so that's 3,600 seconds. Okay, and then all over radius, which is 50 meters times 9.81 meters per second squared. So make sure that, okay, we are squaring the velocity, here the speed. So checking the dimensions, so we have second squared, and in the denominator we have also second squared, so that's okay. And then meters squared and over meter, okay, which would lead to there's another meter here, so meter squared over meter squared. So the fraction here should be unitless, okay, so that we can solve for angle theta. So it's now unitless, so we get the value. So 20.1373 approximately, 20.1373 degrees. Okay, so the angle should, the curve be banked as 20.1373 degrees. So another application of centripetal force. So this time it's the gravitational force, okay, that is equal to the centripetal force. So how do we solve for this gravity? Okay, the pull of gravity. So how many newtons is it pulling the satellite, for example, or a planet, or the moon, or two planets, etc. So the gravitational attraction okay, is along a line joining the centers of mass of the two bodies. Okay, so if we have this smaller object or quote unquote body and the greater K mass body, so the force K of attraction between them have the same magnitude, okay, but they go in opposite directions, and the distance between them, okay, the measurement for the distance should be taken from the center, okay, of the first body to the center of the second body. So it should be consistent with also the third law of motion. Okay, that the magnitude of the force is the same for each body, okay, but opposite in direction. So mathematically, the gravitational force, okay, is uh, the universal gravitational constant G times the product of the masses of the bodies, and then inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the centers of mass, okay, or the centers of the two bodies. So for planetary motion, again, the gravitational force is responsible for the circular, okay, motion. But according to Kepler, so for planets moving around the sun, so the motion K is not circular but elliptical. So in pre-calculus, okay, an ellipse has two foci on its major axis. Okay, so if the sun is one of the foci, so there's another point here for the focus. So if this planet is orbiting okay, the sun, so this is the assumed okay, path. So it would lead to the second law. Okay, Kepler made the statement that a planet sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. Okay, so the time taken to travel this distance, okay, is equal to the time to travel taken to travel this distance. Okay, so meaning the areas, okay, these pink regions, they are equal. So we'll use that later for some specific examples. So for the third law of Kepler's laws of motion, it's the square of the orbital period of a planet, okay, is proportional to the cube of the orbit's semi-major axis. So if this is the planet, so the square of the time that it would take, okay, to make one full rotation, okay, around the sun is going to be squared, and it's proportional to the cube of the orbit's semi-major axis. So if this is a major axis, then half of it is the semi-major axis. Okay. And supposing we replace the sun with the earth and say there's a satellite, okay, orbiting the earth. So the centripetal force is the gravitational force, right? So from the previous slide, so this is the expression for the gravitational force. So we equate it to the centripetal force equation. So we get, okay, the relationship between these variables here. We can remove m since we can divide the whole equation by m. So we are going to get the relationship, okay, between the orbital period t and the radius, okay, of quote unquote the circle here, or the distance from the center of the ellipse to the satellite, or yeah, the satellite. So the the distance, okay, that is traveled by the satellite is assumed to be 2 pi r, and then it's equal to the product of the velocity and the orbital period. And computing for the velocity, so it's 2 pi r over t. And if we plug it into this equation, so we write 2 pi r over t instead of v, okay? So it would lead to this relationship, okay, between the mass of the Earth and then the radius, okay, the distance um, from the Earth to the satellite, for example, and then inversely proportional to the orbital period. And if we're going to further derive the equation, okay, to relate two objects, okay, to satellites, for example, or to planets, for example. So we use this equation. So from a telecommunications point of view, it's advantageous for satellites to remain at the same location relative to a location on Earth. This can occur only if the satellite's orbital period is the same as the Earth's period of rotation, which is 24 hours. Okay, so at what distance from the center of the Earth can this geosynchronous orbit be found? Okay, so we have the period of rotation. So this is the letter T in the formulas. Okay, so at what distance from the center of the Earth, okay, is the orbit found? So meaning it's going to be the value of R, okay? And then to solve for this, so we use the equation. So the gravitational constant times the mass of the Earth, okay, over 4 pi squared over, or is equal to R cubed over T squared. Or solving for R, for that equation. Okay, so solving for R, so that's basically multiplying these two and then dividing by 4 pi squared, it's equal to R cubed. So meaning cube root of G times the mass of the Earth times T squared over 4 pi squared. So the gravitational constant is, so cube root of, so the gravitational constant, so, okay, iba. So the gravitational constant is 6.674 times 10 to the power of negative 11, okay, Newton meters squared per kilogram squared. And then the mass of the Earth in kilograms is 5.9736 times 10 to the power of 24 kilograms, and multiply this with t squared. So our unit is in newtons, meaning time is in seconds. So that's 24, okay, times 60 times 60, okay, for seconds. And take note that we need first to square this. and then over 4 pi squared. So let's check if the dimensions are correct. So kilogram, newtons is kilogram meter per second squared. So we have kilogram times kilogram over kilogram squared, so cancel. And then meter times meter squared, so that's meter cube. And then the second squared is cancelled with the second squared here. So what we have left is meter cube. Okay, so meaning if we get the square root, then the final unit would be meters, which is correct for an R. Okay, a distance quantity. Okay, so meters for the SI unit. 4.2244 4.2244 times 10 to the power of 7, okay, meters. So from the center of the Earth, okay, the orbit is 4.2244 times 10 to the power of 7 meters. So that's for letter A. So for letter B, what is the orbital speed of the satellite? So for the orbital speed of the satellite, okay, it's 2 pi r over t. So it's 2 pi times the computed r from letter A, which is approximately 4.2244 times 10 to the power of 7 meters. And the orbital period is 24 hours. Okay. Or you can convert that to seconds if you want to, or you can have the unit in meters per hour. So it does not say what's the unit required, so we can just leave it as it is. So times 2 pi and then divided by 24. So that's 1.1059 times 10 to the power of 24, 6, and then 7 meters per hour. Okay, so this is the orbital speed of the satellite.